Thank you so much. And thank you so much for introducing me today to speak at your conference at Digital China. Today, my speech is going to be on how to further increase the knowledge and skills to really thrive in the big data economy. And what I will be doing in my speech today is share some knowledge and knowledge domains on how you can get started with increasing the skills that are really crucial to empower the data economy and make services available for the next generation. Before I get started, let me take a brief moment to introduce myself. I'm very happy to be presenting today. My name is Jan Willem Middelburg, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Sybient. I'm also the author of a number of different books. Today, I'm going to be talking mostly about the Enterprise Big Data Framework, which is a framework that was launched in 2018. I'm a frequent moderator at universities and different training institutes across the world, and I really love lecturing about big data. In my speech today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the structure and ways in which you can get started with the implementation of the Big Data Framework. The Big Data Framework was originally envisioned to provide a vendor-independent, technology-agnostic framework that every organization, no matter small or big or across industry, can use in order to get started with adopting big data best practices. The reason that the framework was created was because there was this lack of standardization. Most of the technology vendors were driving the adoption of their technology products. But in order to thrive in the big data economy, more is required. We need to start thinking about setting up good data processes. We need to make sure that the quality of data is protected. We also need to ensure that there's adequate cybersecurity processes in place to deal with large data sources. And the larger a company becomes, and the more information that needs to be available about that data, the more pressing it is to set up an enterprise big data framework. So this program was created in 2018 and has very rapidly grown across all different regions across the world. And I'm very proud that China is one of the countries that is leading the adoption of the big data framework. And the majority of people that we have taken certification and training in enterprise big data are coming from China. So I'm extremely proud again to be presenting at a Chinese conference today. And I hope to inspire you in this speech to also get started to set up an enterprise big data framework for your own organization. Because the time is limited today, I have selected a number of key topics. These topics will be an implementation program of how you can get started with taking the first steps on an enterprise big data journey. I will start my speech with giving you a bit of an overview of what is required to thrive in the big data economy and why it's so important that every company, no matter how small or large they are, gets started with an enterprise big data program. In the second part of my speech, I will talk more about the enterprise big data framework and the key core components and capabilities that you would need to design and implement in order to make data work in your organization. Last but not least, I will introduce the next steps and the steps that we've taken to put a global certification framework, which is now available in Chinese language as well. With these new steps, I hope to inspire you on this conference to make sure that you take these next steps as well. If there is time and time allows it, we will also have an availability to ask questions and answers. And you can always reach out to me on WeChat directly in case you have any questions during the conference. Let me start our discussion with making you aware of why every company today is becoming a digital company. And there is no better illustration of the power of numbers. And the next slide shows some of the research that has been done by the McKinsey Global Research Institute, and that showcases the power of big data with some of the leading companies that are rising in China, like Alibaba, Baidu, and Tencent. I think the numbers speak for themselves. But if you take a deeper dive and start thinking about the tremendous amount of data that is captured every day for the last decade, you will start to see the sheer numbers and the power that has been involved in the analysis of big data best practices. In order to deal with this tremendous wealth of information, it is really required that companies start to think about setting up a structure to manage all this data. And this is exactly why the big data framework was created. Lots of companies started to see the problems when their data sets grew to unmanageable sizes. Both questions arose from an analytics algorithm, but also from a governance point of view. How is it possible to create these massive quantities of data? And how do we extract value from these data sets on a day-to-day basis? The Enterprise Big Data Framework provides a global best practice and open source standards that every organization can use in order to deal with that. And in the next few slides, I will give you a bit of an introduction and overview of what the Enterprise Big Data looks like. I'm very happy to be presenting today again in this virtual conference, but I would much rather have been in person back in Beijing to introduce some of these key concepts. On the slide in front of you, you see a picture of me presenting last year in Beijing to talk about the big data framework. So I'm very sad that I cannot be there with you in person today, but I hope that this virtual meeting will kind of be a good, adequate replacement because of the whole global situation we currently have in. In the last year, we have taken some major steps to bring the Enterprise Big Data Framework towards China. And thanks to the hard work that our partner APMG International has done, we were able to translate all of the materials towards the Chinese language. And we've made two different versions. One is in traditional Chinese, and the one is in the simplified Chinese version. So all of the materials, all of the books, all of the examinations, and the certification schemes are now available in Chinese language as well. And although I cannot take the first certifications this year in person back in Beijing, I would love to hope to see all of you again next year. The Big Data Framework, in a summary overview, consists of 6 core components. And those 6 core components you see right here on the slide in front of you. It has been researched by a lot of different people that you will need to set up an enterprise big data framework and take care of all of these 6 core elements in order to be successful in the big data economy. And they will kind of work sequentially. Every organization, no matter how small or how large, whether in government or industry, needs to start with setting up a big data strategy. The big data strategy is at the center of the big data framework because every additional step needs to align towards this strategy. I always say during one of my speeches, if you don't know where you're going, every road will take you there. And you can potentially spend the rest of your life analyzing data because there is so much of it. After you've developed an enterprise big data strategy, the next step is to look at your technology and architecture. There are a variety of different industry best practices and standards that you need to consider when setting up your technological architecture. After you've defined your architecture, it's time to start educating your people about algorithms. In order to move through data efficiently and quickly, the algorithms need to be programmed. And for that reason, every data organization requires data analysts and data scientists who have the skills and knowledge to do this. So the big data algorithm section talks about how to design this. Then we move towards big data processes. And these are the security, privacy, and regulatory requirements that are imposed by different governments across the world. It is crucial that every company follows the guidance and policies that have been set up by either governments or by international best practice organizations like the Institute of Standards and Organization. After big data processes have defined, we need to implement them in the organization. So we need to make sure that policies get executed and that the people who are working with data on a day-to-day basis are following clear guidance and know which data can lead towards particular results. All of these topics are particularly discussed within the big data functions section of the Enterprise Big Data Framework. The last major topic of the Enterprise Big Data Framework concerns itself with artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is a different way of applying algorithms to the same fundamental structure that we see discussed in the previous 5 modules. In order to be successful in artificial intelligence, you would therefore first need to have all of the other building blocks in place. So I hope that even though this speech is brief today, this gives you a good overview of the key components that you would need in order to set up a big data framework. All of these materials have been outlined in a series of books. And together with our partner APMG International, we have created independent and globally leading certifications for different levels in the enterprise. Every person that wants to learn more about enterprise big data and the way to design this into any organization can download all of the books, which have also been available in a Chinese translation, and get started with learning, studying, and taking the examinations, which are globally recognized by APMG International. As part of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, it is very important to start designing an analysis process, which is outlined in the slide in front of you. It is really important to have a structure in place that is able to guide all of your data through a data pipeline. So no matter the size of your company or the business objectives that you have, every data project should move in the same way. And in the Enterprise Big Data Framework, we will explain the different steps and the way that data moves in an organization, all the way from the initial business objectives towards presentation and providing the reports, visualizations, and dashboards on which enterprises can start making their decisions. By this analysis, they will be able to make better decisions every single time, and therefore have the ability to outperform their competitors in terms of the speediness with which they can make the decisions, the quality of decisions, and the amount of data that will be driving their decisions. All of these components are part of the Enterprise Big Data Framework, and you will learn more about them in the different modules that we described in the previous couple of slides. What we've seen so far is that there is great interest within the Big Data Framework. And I'm very proud to share that in the last 2 years, since the Enterprise Big Data Framework was launched, we have been certifying hundreds of people throughout China. I always specifically like this photo, which was the first class of Enterprise Big Data certified practitioners within China. So I'm very pleased to see that, and I hope to be there for a next training course. We've taken a number of different initiatives over the years, and one of our primary purposes, and I reach out to everyone today, is that we continue to work with our partners in China who are promoting the adoption of the Enterprise Big Data Framework. Last year, we've done a visit towards China and a number of different provinces, including Shanghai and Beijing, and met with a number of organizations to discuss how they could start teaching the Enterprise Big Data Framework throughout China. And so far, in just 2 years, we have closed a number of very successful collaborations, and more people throughout the Chinese region are becoming familiar with the key principles, practices, and the way that you can organize an organization to benefit from big data best practices. On this press release, which is available on our website, you can see some of the key success stories and the certifications that we were able to hand out to a number of organizations that are really driving the adoption of enterprise big data throughout China. For that reason, if you would like to learn more about enterprise big data, you can always reach out to me individually and contact me through WeChat, or you can connect with a number of our existing partners throughout China. At this moment in time, there are 6 partners who have been accredited by the Enterprise Big Data Framework to deliver consulting and training services and an implementation of the Enterprise Big Data Framework throughout the rest of China. So if you would be interested in learning more about the program, these very good organizations provide the materials, classrooms, and education, and teach the enterprise big data in the Chinese language. So I highly encourage you to reach out to our partners. In case you want to become a partner, or your company wants to train multiple people in order to adopt the big data framework, I highly encourage you that you reach out to me directly, and I will guide you in the right process to connect with the right people to make this happen. I would really like to thank you once again for taking the time to invite me to present at the conference today. I hope you will have a very enjoyable rest of the conference, and that you will be inspired to learn new things about new technologies and really move China forwards to be the leader in the digital economy. Thanks again for inviting me, and I look forward to meeting you all in person one day.